Hi, welcome back. In this tutorial we're going to have a look at making a ride cymbal. Now cymbals are one of the hardest things to synthesize because there's a lot going on when you hit a cymbal. Lots of harmonics that are kind of all over the place and don't necessarily fit together that well. So it's very difficult to try and synthesize that using simple waveforms because it's so unpredictable. It's very difficult to know what tones are playing when, and a lot of people have found it very difficult to analyze exactly what's going on when a cymbal is hit. So this is why drum machines like the Roland TR-909 just used samples of cymbals instead of trying to synthesize them. But its predecessor, the TR-808, did actually use synthesis to create cymbals. And what was done there were 6 oscillators used, all with square waves or pulse waves, and with some apparently quite clever circuitry and some bandpass and high pass filters. So there was quite a lot going on in there, and that was in an attempt to try and kind of recreate that chaotic sound that you get from hitting a cymbal. So we're not going to try and create any kind of realistic sounding cymbal. You're better off using a sample of a real cymbal for that. What we're going to do is closer to the way the 808 cymbal was created, but we're not going to use 6 oscillators. Instead, we're going to group 3 simplers together, and this is the first time we're going to look at layering in this drum rack. But really, it's no different to what we did with the toms and the congas here. But what we're going to do is layer them together so that they're all triggered by the one note, which is going to play all 3 of the samples together. So the basic principle is pretty much the same as the grouping we've looked at already, but there's just a couple of different things we need to look at. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to use slice 16 here, or at least we're going to use that position or that chain. And what we're going to do first of all, we'll rename that to ride, and we'll take our little repeating note, move that up to ride, which at the moment there's not really anything going on in that slice, because it's right at the end there where there isn't much going on. We're going to pretty much start with the clap sound, the same part of the sample that we use for our clap sound, and might give that a bit of length there. Right. So we're going to start off with that same sort of sound, which I suppose is a little bit like a little bit of white noise. And just like we've done in the previous tutorials, we're just going to use a tiny little loop. So let's enable that loop, and I'm going to bring it all the way back to around 20 somewhere, and this one I'm going to bring back. Actually, this one I think slightly less, and we're going to move the start forward a little bit too, so that it starts a little bit later there. And also we're going to turn the fade up a bit, as we have been doing with our other loops, just because it makes it a bit smoother. Okay, that's made a sort of a buzzing sound. So we'll use the volume envelope, turn the sustain down and the release up. Give it that kind of nice decay there. Now we're going to turn the transpose pretty much all the way up, because what we're trying to create here at the moment is probably closer to a triangle sound than anything, but that nice kind of ringing high sort of bell sound. Bit of high pass filter to take the bottom end out. Now that's not too bad. Bit of this stereo spread effect might be nice as well, but you've got to bear in mind that works by detuning the left and right channels. And as we're using this detune setting here, that will affect it. And you can hear that has quite a big effect on the sound. So if we turn the spread up, it affects that as well. But it's quite a nice sort of stereo effect, so it's worth having. Turn that volume up a bit. Actually, we'll turn it back down and we'll turn the velocity setting up so that we can use velocity. Maybe we'll stick that at about 75% so it doesn't have too much of an effect. Okay, well, we'll leave that sample for the moment. Now what we're going to do is we're going to group this into a little sub-rack. So what we do differently this time is we're going to right click on the simpler itself and we're going to choose group to drum rack. And you can see that's created a nice little rack there. But something we're going to need to look at is the note receive settings. Because when we did that, all I've done is treat it as a brand new drum rack. And if we click the in-out settings here to have a look, it's just assigned the default, which is C1. Of course, that's no use to us because this top chain is receiving this note here, which is, we can see down the bottom here, says D sharp 2. And if we look, we can look at these settings by pressing the in-out button. See, it's D sharp 2 there, but it's sending out a C3. So what we could do, and what happened in our conga rack and toms rack, you can see here it says it just receives on all, and then it lets the sub rack, or the chains in the sub rack, decide which notes to receive on. For this one, we're just going to leave it because we want this to receive on D2. We could make all of them receive on D2 in this rack, but for now we'll just let it receive on C3 because that's what the top rack is sending. Yeah, so it's playing the C3. So let's just do it that way for now. So we'll rename that to ride. Name this as well. We'll call this ride 1. And now what we'll do is we'll just copy this by dragging it and holding Control or Alt on Mac. Now what we'll do is we'll solo it here so we can hear the new sound. And it should sound the same as the other one for now. Now what we're going to do is try and create the bell of the ride, that kind of lower bell sound. So we're going to change the filter to a band pass. Now that's already a bell sound. We could try them together. Not different enough. So it just sounds like two of the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a really small loop of a waveform. We're not going to use this waveform here. We'll move forward to that more percussive sound that was in the sample. We'll use a bit of that. And we can see when we look here, it's kind of looks fairly like a fairly even waveform. So we'll just start that a little bit in there. And we're going to press the snap button, which will make it snap to 0 crossings. And what that means is that basically the line in the middle there represents the 0 point, and the waveform crosses back and forward over it, and it will only let us put the start and end points when it crosses over that 0 point, which means we don't get any clicks, and that will give us a cleaner waveform. Now we're going to need to tune through this a bit until we find the right setting. We might need to change it quite a lot before we find it. Kind of have to tune it. So we might want a really small waveform. Well look, for now we'll leave it there. And we'll tune this some more once we get them all going together, because then we'll be able to hear it a bit better. So, we'll rename that and call it Bell. And then we'll copy this one again, holding Control, and we'll rename that Ride 2. Now this one's going to be more of the kind of noisy sort of sound. As you see, I copied the first one there, not the bell, because we only need one of these bell sounds. But this second sound is going to be a lot more similar to the first one. So let's solo this. Now we're going to want a much looser loop. Much more like your kind of noise. And make the high pass filter a bit higher. Might want to turn it down a bit. So let's try them all together. Alright, that's not too bad. Let's try it in the loop, with a drum loop, and hear how it sounds. So duplicate the last loop, and we'll take the open hi-hat and we'll just move that up because we don't want both of them playing together. Okay, so let's trigger that. Maybe adjust the that might be a bit better. Let's solo that on its own again. Okay, that's not sounding too bad. That I think could lose some of the attack. Maybe. Okay, that's not sounding too bad at all. What we might do is just add an EQ8 And we'll just drag it to there. And we'll stick a high pass filter fairly high up. And we'll maybe stick a low pass as well. We'll just see, because some of those, when some of the ride here, there's a lot going on in the high frequencies there. We've pitched this up a lot. And it might just get a little bit hard on the ears after a while. So let's try that now. Just try the Okay, now that's not sounding too bad. We could try a compressor, but we may not need it. A little bit of compression. But really, I think that's sounding pretty good. I'll turn it down a little bit maybe. Stick some closed hi-hats. And there we go, that's a ride cymbal. That's not too bad, that's quite usable. You could definitely use that in some tracks. It's much more in keeping with the older sort of synthesized drum machine rides, but it's not too bad. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.